All right, and we are live. It's been a couple weeks since I have done this, so we're going to attempt a Facebook Live version of LCI Hot Takes for this week, and we'll see if we can get some interaction here. Normally, if you're not aware of what I'm doing with this, you'll see on our Facebook, or not on our Facebook, on our YouTube channel, you will see occasionally me posting some videos, and I'm often recording them in my car, and they're usually just some like kind of brief 10 to 15 minute videos on latest happenings in the space of politics and whatnot. So this is going to be my attempt at just going live for a few minutes, and we're going to talk about let's talk about some walls and immigration, prohibition, and some other stuff. Hopefully we get to some cool topics here, and I hope you enjoy it. Let me again mention that eventually this will go up on YouTube. So I'll probably, if there's any discussion or comments to be made live and I mention your name, be aware that is going to go up on YouTube eventually. Let's begin with this. I have been asked more times than I can count reasonably, what do I think about Trump's wall? And how would a libertarian try and deal with some of the immigration issues of our day? And this has gone on for oh my gosh, I've heard questions of this sort for ever since I started down the road of thinking about liberty in this way. And so more specifically now we're dealing with this idea of the wall and stuff that's going on there. And usually the question kind of comes like this. It really is like, should we have a wall at all? What do you think about that? And usually the way that I will, initially kind of respond is something akin to this is the issue of the wall is not really one about whether or not we should have a wall, but what should our ultimate immigration policy be in the first place? So there's a bunch of issues at hand here. Fundamentally speaking, libertarians have held to many libertarians have held to what would be, they call it an open borders policy, oftentimes. And that's pretty typical. What that doesn't mean is open willy-nilly. Sometimes the objection comes, well, should there be any restrictions whatsoever? And I don't know if there's really a good argument to be made to say well, there should be, there's no reason whatsoever to have any policy at the border at all. I don't think that's what really the open borders advocates are saying. Most of the time, if they are, they're kind of probably pendulum swinging the wrong way. So I think that's kind of, potentially a little silly. Hey Jay, hey Chad, how you doing? So what is really going on here? Hey Chris. The open borders advocates are really saying that that there should not be any undue restrictions at the border in general, and I have some interesting kind of examples as to why that kind of should be the case, and even stuff that's happening right now in the wake of the kind of rise of anti-immigrant rhetoric from the right in particular. And I'll get to that in a little while. But also, we should note here as well that the rhetoric and tone of the way in which anti-immigration arguments or anti-illegal immigration arguments in particular have been taking, they have really changed. Because it used to be, if you asked 10 years ago and what the issue is with illegal immigration, I guarantee you, and I have the, I've had the conversations. I won't name names, but I've had conversations that have completely changed in this regard, and people who are very against illegal immigration in a very particular way. The way they argued it was, oh well, illegal immigrants are bad for the economy. They are they're bad for the economy. They take entitlements. They take American jobs. They're a drain. They don't pay taxes and blah. I mean, you remember hearing these sorts of things? The tone of that has really changed now, and a lot of it has to do, I think, with the way that Trump has approached it, and the classic, they're a bunch of bad hombres, blah blah blah. Hey guys, it's nice to see y'all. Hey, there's Elijah. Nice to see you, Elijah. Hey Heather, how you doing? This is our hot takes video, and I'm sitting here at home rather than doing this in the car this time around. Oh, by the way, Aaron, if you end up showing up or you watch this later, this is a dulce de leche stout. So that's Spanish for candy from milk, by the way. Yeah. So I am not a barbarian. I know my Spanish, right? Anyway, and again, the tone, very different now than it used to be. Now, instead of focusing as much on the economy, it's focused more on the possibilities of crime, and whatnot, and the bad guys who are coming over, which is very interesting. That's kind of on the left. On the one hand, is like talking about things like families getting separated and whatnot, and they're trying to show those sides of things, whereas the right's wanting to show the violence coming over and whatnot, as if that's really like somehow really really changed. And I think it has. There's definitely some evidence to suggest that is the case, but. I think it's just different how you see it now, and you hear it argued. Let's go back to okay, how was it originally argued, and what were the arguments to respond to that? Again, bad for the economy, taking entitlements, they're doing all that sort of thing. All of those arguments were really kind of silly when you think about it. For instance, bad for the economy. Well, if these people are coming over to work at low wage jobs, that's look, that's just competition, and nobody has a right to a job, and it certainly does not have a right to have the American government ensure that they have a job, and so competition in wages is a good thing, and makes for lower priced goods and services overall, which ultimately leads to greater and greater spread of prosperity. So I mean, I know that kind of sounds weird for a second. I mean, we want high paying jobs too. But why? We want that in order to have high productivity. Really, that's what we're looking for, is how do we get high productivity? And it's not just by having high wages. If that were the case, then obviously it would be desirable to just raise the minimum wage for everybody. That's not the way it works. You know this if you studied economics for any given amount of time. Okay, so that was yeah, that was sort of answering that. Entitlements is really kind of silly. On the one hand, there are instances that of like, okay, it's possible it was possible for sometimes for illegal immigrants to be able to get involved in schools, for the children to be involved in schools and whatnot, but the data does not bear it out. I mean, for one thing, if there was some way for illegal immigrants to just consistently get those entitlements, like, okay, eventually they're going to get deported. Illegal immigrants on the whole don't end up going all after entitlements all the time, because that is the signal that, hey, I'm there, I'm taking this, I'm now consuming resources here, and that's their signal to the people around them, the governing authorities, that, hey, I'm eligible to be deported now. So like it's actually not really it's kind of a misnomer that entitlements was an issue. In fact, there was Heather, you may be interested to know this. I don't know, you may have heard of it. But there was a report released by the Texas Comptroller, at least I want to say it was about 8 years ago, may have been more like 10, that suggested that illegal immigrants in Texas contributed way more to the Texas economy and to the tax base, way more than that they consumed in any kind of entitlement programs that were available. So I thought that was interesting, and that was just in Texas. And that, again, that was 10 years ago. Is it changed now? Perhaps, but that's how things worked. Then there was some of the arguments. Well, if you keep letting them come, they're gonna, we have to curb immigration, because otherwise they're gonna vote, the wrong way or something. You'll hear from the right that perhaps, these, they're coming for entitlements, and then they're just gonna vote Democrat once they're here. Like, hold on a sec. Do you really realize what you're saying? Like, immigration does not mean that you instantaneously have the right to vote. That's for citizenship, and that's not what we're talking about here. So those sorts of arguments kind of fall flat on their face. So then let's just kind of skip around though and go straight over to what the change in tone now seems to be at this point in time. And it tends to be leveraged towards, oh, well, you know, there's violence, there's even human trafficking and whatnot. You know, that's, and then some of this, I mean, this, don't get me wrong, this stuff is real. I mean, there's, my parents have some interesting stories to even tell. They live, you know, not altogether too far from the border in southwest Texas, in the Frio River Valley down there. And there are concerns. I mean, legitimately so. I mean, these things happen, but what's really happening though is also due to a variety of different factors which are not being addressed, and then the solutions that are being proposed are not going to be effective. So let's say what is part of the rise of violence at the border? Well, to a grand extent, it's due to two primary things: prohibition in the war on drugs, essentially, and then the rise of prohibition type policies, and even in immigration itself. So immigration restrictions are actually contributing to the greater immigration problem. I think that's actually relatively certain. Let's pause for a second. Elijah says, "Did you expect the authoritarians on the right to care about economics when it goes against their narrative?" Of course not. that's sort of the. I mean, but we have to call it out for what it is. That's for sure. But yeah, thanks, man. Nice to have you here. So, what are some of these immigration problems that are occurring? Well, the more difficult that the U.S. government makes it to get through to the United States legally, the more that they are encouraging people who have and who don't feel like they have any other good option to come over here illegally. So this is interesting because this happens in conjunction with prohibition and the war on drugs. So the ratcheting up of the war on drugs, in many respects, is another kind of interesting contributing factor here. One thing that actually, though, that is particularly notable, though, is that it's the number one drug that has been smuggled across the border, you know, across like the southern border with Mexico, for instance, is actually marijuana. And the instances of that happening is actually gone down tremendously, and the data is there to support it. And in fact, in the latest issue of Reason magazine here, David Beer has an article called "The Wall Won't End Pot Smuggling at the Border. Legalization Will." And the data is now there that, you know, within a couple of years, 2/3 of the American populace are going to be living or bordering a state that has legalized marijuana, and there's also like literally there are quotes in this article of marijuana producers in Mexico saying that legalization in the United States has caused the price of marijuana to just plummet. So smuggling becomes a lot less viable when the price of pot goes from $40 a pound or whatever it is, $40. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't smoke or do anything like that. When it goes from, you know, when it cuts in half, the price, you know, when the price cuts in half of something like that, I mean, just the incentives start going out the window. But with the rise of immigration restrictions and the rise of people who want to get across the border illegally, this I mean, imagine you're a smuggler, and now your smuggling operations of drugs are going down the tubes, but wow, there's a new opportunity to smuggle humans. Oh my gosh! So, you know, it's not really a surprise that the smugglers and traffickers would go from smuggling, you know, one high value good to another high value good, and then they're going to take advantage of those people. So all of these kind of contributing factors kind of play into this. And so, you know, what is a wall going to do? Well, a wall is actually, you know, it's not really going to help all that much when it comes down to it, because what we've seen is that it foreshadowing even, you know, what we're experiencing now. When walls were being built, even up to 15 years ago, a few hundred miles were being built, you were still seeing tunnels being dug underneath them, and even to the point of like there's a picture in this article here. It's hilarious. People will go to great lengths to try and make this happen. This is for real. Like this was they tried to put a ramp over the wall. This was years ago, and they tried to put a ramp over the wall, and their Ford Explorer got stuck up there. So these things are ridiculous, but they happen. But again, you're not going to be able to solve these types of issues by putting more and more prohibitions on top, but rather legalization, and also just unrestricting immigration in new ways. So make it easier, make it more expeditious to get over here legally, and you're going to find people who are going to be more willing to do it. But when it comes down to you have to make a trip to the wall or make a trip to the border and wait at the border for some ungodly amount of time while the U.S. government processes your possible visa, then potentially rejects it. I mean, what are people going to do if they feel like their situation is bad enough, and it would even get worse potentially by going near to the border, having to stay over there? They don't have enough money to already do this as it is. They're just looking for a way out and a way to kind of get back on their feet anyway. Well, they're going to take whatever means they can get. And if that means going over illegally and taking their chances because they don't really feel like they have any other good way, well, what do you think they're going to do? I mean, these people are often desperate. So instead of give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free anymore, now it's, well, we only want your best and your brightest, and you're the ones who are totally okay with waiting like months and months and months for their visa and can afford to sit on their butts for a couple of months while we do all the paperwork or something to that effect. I mean, you get what I'm saying here? Like this is not. I mean, it's funny. You almost want to say like this isn't the America I grew up in or something like that. But the point is like what sort of principles do we want to espouse here? Like let's just say we're not even talking libertarian here. We're talking more like general cultural values. Is what we want to be a kind of welcoming culture? Is that what we want to be? Or do we want to be one that is exclusive and we don't want to hang out with you at all unless you are exactly like us? I mean, I understand that we want to have a distinct American culture. Okay, fine. But like the distinct American culture that we have is one of a melting pot, and it's different. It's got all sorts of stuff in it, and it's really great that way. So I don't really feel like bad about that. To be able to say like that's a good thing. This is exemplified in another interesting way too. I'll share this in the comments at some point. But there was a recent article in Chemical and Engineering News. I don't know if it's publicly available yet. But it's about science and immigration issues, and in particular, looking at the way in which graduate students are making it over to the United States. I mean, you may or may not know this, but in the natural sciences, anywhere from in many graduate schools where some of the best and brightest go, anywhere from 35, 40, 50%, sometimes more of their graduate students in the natural sciences are made up of what are essentially immigrants, people who are coming here to study and do well and learn from the best and the brightest professors in the nation, in the world, to go do really interesting things in science. And the way in which the rhetoric and the policies are being handed down, I mean, we're losing really good people to do good work like this in the sciences these days. Personal story here: when I was at MIT, I had a friend who literally had a job offer to be a full professor, I think it was a full professorship at a major university in the United States, and he could not get back into the United States when he was traveling in Canada because of visa issues and whatnot, and ended up having to like be delayed a massive amount of time. And why? Why was that? Well, because he was an immigrant, but moreover, he was he's originally from Iran. But what does that matter? I mean, guys, this guy is freaking brilliant. I mean, he makes me look like a neophyte. He's so good. And you know, I had multiple Iranian colleagues at MIT. I mean, we had what? In my group at MIT, we had 13 different countries and languages represented. I think when I counted it at one point or another, out of like 30 people. I mean, it was insane. And that's the way this works sometimes, is that you, in the sciences in particular, you go and do science where you can do the best work in your particular field. So you travel a lot. It's just the way it is. That's the way it is in science and engineering. So I think that's just nuts. It's just really heinous when we think about that. Not only are we not being welcoming to, you know, the give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free, but we're also even losing opportunities with the best and brightest out in the world because of visa issues, and because companies don't want to have to go through the expense of sponsoring and going through all the paperwork and all the work that the U.S. government wants to push them into in order to make sure that the proper visa and green card and all that is followed. And then, of course, don't even get started on trying to get to be a citizen here. I mean, that can be. I got stories on that too of friends of mine who ended up in just battles for years just trying to become citizens. I mean, this whole thing is insane when you look at it. So in the end, the point is that, look, if you really want to solve issues at the border, this is not about just putting in a wall. This is about completely changing and revamping the way in which it is even possible to get into the country legally. And so, you know, look, this is not really about, you know, whether we want to term or the way that we look at this as open borders or closed borders or whatever, but look at the actual policies and how they're being done, and decide for a second, like, what kind of people do you want to be? Do you want to have the kind of country that is welcoming to people, or do you want to be, you know, a gated community that has no interaction with the outside world? Libertarians are often somehow, you know, impinged of being like, you know, isolationists. Like, guess what? This is the way that we show them, that we definitely show them that we're not. That's, you know, there's a classic quote of goods and services don't cross. If people and goods and services don't cross borders, armies eventually will. And that's really, you know, not only do we say we should avoid conflict in this regard, but we should be welcoming to other people and welcoming the opportunity to trade and have dialogue and interactions and relationships with people in this way. So I don't know, I hope all that kind of made sense and it was fun for you to kind of listen to a little bit. But let's see, just to see if there's any other comments. Eli Meyer says, the same thing happened in the neighboring county where I live. The county was dry where I lived, and all the county line bars and liquor stores had campaign signs that was against making our county dry. Yeah, and yeah, it's a fair point to remember that, you know, if you want to look back at what prohibition caused from the outset, like prohibition of liquor and alcohol resulted in the rise of mafias. Prohibition in the war on drugs resulted in the rise of international cartels. If you don't get that, then you have not learned the lesson of prohibition. Hey, Anand, see you there. And Ben Ranger posts a link as well for some folks. All right, well, a couple other little things here I'm just going to throw out there. Again, I hope you enjoyed this, and remember this is going to go up on YouTube eventually, and we'll make some content there as well. We do other kind of hot takes videos once every couple of weeks, and I try to put them up as often as I can. Another little piece of news that, you know, I showed you, I'm enjoying my subscription to Reason Mag. It's really cool. It's actually kind of fun just to have the physical copy. There's another new mag coming out. My good buddy CJ Engel from reformedlibertarian.com. It's a great website. If you're of the Reformed theology persuasion, it's wonderful. If you're not of the Reformed theology persuasion, as I am, you'll still find it really interesting. If you enjoy history, if you enjoy understanding theology, I mean, CJ's great. His crew's great. And he's got another project called austrolibertarian.com, and a new Austro Libertarian magazine, which is going to have physical copies associated with it as well. Check it out. It looks really cool, and I'm gonna try and support it here as soon as I get a chance. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So I hope you enjoy this, and we're going to see if this Facebook Live post gets some more traffic over to our YouTube page. And oh, Ben says you meant to post a quote by Jeff Dice, but didn't translate. Well, you got about 30 more seconds here, Ben, if you want to get that up. But hope you enjoyed this, and if we get some good responses here, maybe I'll do more of these in the future, where they go live on Facebook, and then we post them over to YouTube another time. Just had some extra time tonight, so it made sense to go ahead and do it. But we're 26 minutes in, and I've had a good time. I'll see you guys soon. Check us out at libertarianchristians.com, and subscribe to our podcast, get on our YouTube page, and subscribe everywhere. Donate if you can. We really appreciate it. There's so many cool things that we got going this year. Besides this, some of our new programs, we're going to have some audiobooks coming up. Audiobooks, woo. If you like audiobooks, we're going to have some cool stuff for you this year. And I got some neat research projects underway that I'll be talking more about in the ensuing future. But we'll close it up. Hope you guys have a good night. See you.